The Jewish Story Podcasts. What is the greatest mystery in life? The greatest mystery is to know what we are doing here in this world. And how do we discover this? That is the subject of this podcast. In this talk, I will share with you the two most significant events on my path to unravelling this mystery. But before I tell you my stories, let me put the subject matter on the table in full view of all by telling a Hasidic story. Let's go to the wedding celebrations of Rabbi Nachman of Breslev some 240 years ago in the Ukraine. He got married when he was 14 years old and his bride 13. After the marriage ceremony, as customary, the bride and groom went around greeting the guests. Rabbi Nachman asked everyone the same question: "What are you doing here?" People answered in traditional fashion: "I am your grandfather's third cousin from your mother's side," or "I am your uncle's mother-in-law," or "we used to live next to your parents." Anyway, sometimes later, after many similar responses, Rabbi Nachman said to his bride, "This place is not for us," and they left, accompanied by a number of his young friends. They say that on that night, the Hasidic group known as Hasidei Breslev was born. Have you ever been to a wedding at which the bride and bridegroom suddenly left before the end? What was Rabbi Nachman so determined to discover? It seems he wanted to know what each guest was doing in this world, not what he or she was doing at the wedding. According to Rabbi Nachman and our sages, our mission in this world is inscribed in our name, and our name is the identity of our soul. Thus, according to Rabbi Nachman, our soul equals our name, which equals our mission in this world. They are all one of the same thing, and they add up to our real identity. And if I were to ask you the same question while you are listening to the podcast, what are you doing here? I wonder what you would say. Now, if you would have spoken to me 27 years ago and told me about the equation soul equals name equals mission, I would not have known what you were talking about. Soul was not part of my lexicon, not at home, not in the synagogue or at school, not at university, and not even in the pubs I used to frequent. It meant nothing to me. My name also meant nothing. It was meaningless. It was just a label, something written in my passport, in my ID card. My mission, what mission? The nearest I got to discovering my mission in life was going for a trial at Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club. I was rejected, so end of mission, which was probably a good thing, otherwise I would not be sitting here talking to you. The way I looked at myself and the world around me was quite simple. The world was more or less meaningless, full of random events. I moved about in the world from one house to another, one place of work to another, one decision to another, from one pub to another, without too much thought, without any sense of meaning. And then something happened which set me off on a very different path. In 1998, we went on a family holiday to Brighton, England. We lived in Sfat at the time, in the north of Israel, and we swapped houses with a family in Brighton. One day I planned to visit an old school friend. The morning of the trip, I went down to check the car, and to my surprise, I discovered that someone had come in the middle of the night and stolen the windscreen. So no trip. I was very disappointed and a little annoyed. But what to do? We decided to go for a walk around the lanes of Brighton. On passing a shop which caught our attention, a sort of New Age shop, we went in, and in the middle of the shop was a big machine, a Kirlian photography machine which took photos of your aura. We didn't know much about auras, the field of energy which surrounds every individual, and which this machine was capable of photographing in color. We had our auras photographed, and with the photo in hand, mine being a blur of red and orange, I went upstairs to a room, full of cardboard boxes and 2 chairs. On one chair sat a woman, very, very overweight. I gave her the photo, and she began rattling off about the meaning of the colors red and orange, about my solar plexus and my need for control. But within a minute I was transported to an entirely different place. I had what I call a vision, though I didn't actually see anything. I had a vision of my entire life, divided up into 3 stages: the stage of the body, the stage of the psyche, and the stage of the spirit. The vision lasted about 100th of a second. Nothing earth-shattering about the message. Anybody who has read Maslow or Erickson, who have written about human development, will not find anything new or original regarding the stages. However, there was something completely new for me in the experience itself. It was totally clear to me that the vision was not a figment of my imagination. It was not something that had been on my mind. It was a message I had received from something or someone, I knew not what. That was not me, but beyond me. A few days later we were back in Israel and life carried on as normal, if anything in Israel can be called normal. But something happened in that room on the 2nd floor of the New Age shop in the lanes that changed my life. Only some years later did I come upon a term which captured for me that experience: a breach of being. A term used by David Patterson, professor of Holocaust Studies at Texas University. For the average secular Westerner, as I was then, being was all that there was in this physical world. We were highly developed animals, and there was nothing beyond that. However, I knew that I had received a message from beyond me. A breach had been made in the way I related to myself and the world. And when a breach is made in a wall, then things can start moving in and out. In other words, change can take place, which is what happened. As the popular saying goes, when the pupil is ready, the teacher turns up. Within a year or so I found a teacher, Dr. Mark Cohen, who lived in my hometown of Tzfat. He was a Scottish philosopher who, together with his wife, Dr. Amanda Cohen, had translated some of the writings of the Kabbalist Rabbi Ashlag into English. I began to learn Torah with Mark. He called our sessions Jewish soul therapy. Mark decided he wanted to learn a new vocation, to be a life between lives therapist. It was a new field of therapy developed by the American hypnotherapist Michael Newton in the 1990s. Newton, who used to do past life regression, discovered that a lot of his patients, after describing their past lives, would move on to describe a stage which he called life between lives. During this stage, the soul of a person who had recently died would meet with a group of elder souls to discuss his or her past life. Part of the requirements of the course was to practice past life regression. I was Mark's first client. The past life regression was carried out in our house in the old city of Tzfat. Initially, I was induced into a deep state of relaxation. Then, through guided imagination, I was led to a past life. I saw myself as a Jewish teenager in the Warsaw Ghetto, with my family, 3 sisters, 2 brothers, parents and grandparents. When we ran out of food, I became, like many others of my age, a smuggler, bringing food into the ghetto. One time I was caught outside the ghetto by a German soldier, loaded with food under my coat. I was put up against the ghetto wall and shot dead. Intending then to carry on to the next stage of life between lives, Mark asked me to say farewell to my family. I immediately had the most powerful cathartic experience in my life. I began weeping profusely. For how long, I had no idea. It was like a dam had burst. Water was pouring out and there was no way of stopping it. Until no water or no tears were left. I identified my 3 sisters in that past life as my wife and 2 daughters in this life. Now is a good time to share something which I have not mentioned up until now. For many years before the past life regression, I would imagine my wife and children dying. The thoughts were invariably accompanied by tears. I had never experienced any traumas in my life. Nobody had ever died on me suddenly. I had never been involved in the Holocaust. There was absolutely no logical reason for such thoughts and for such tears. After the past life regression, these thoughts suddenly stopped. Now I only get such a thought maybe once or twice a year, and without the tears. In the last year there are a few more thoughts, naturally connected to the war in Israel. The experience of having had a past life was a further form of breach of being. A famous French pathologist said at the end of the 19th century, "I have examined hundreds of bodies and have yet to find the soul. But my experience of the past life regressions suggested otherwise, and only confirmed what had been part of the Jewish tradition for thousands of years. We are, as human beings, a breach of being. We are both body and soul, and the source of the soul is from beyond, from God." During the last 27 years, I have written 2 books. The second book, The Life of a Stone, recently published, is a reflection on the life of a soul, connecting the threads between significant events over 2 lives, giving them meaning, coherence that didn't exist before. The book describes the jagged path of moving from a meaningless to meaningful life, and attempt to discern an order beneath the seeming chaos of life, or as Rabbi Sachs says, to hear the music beneath the noise, to connect the dots. In other words, to discover my soul, my name, and my mission. I have spoken of the vision in the lanes of Brighton. I have spoken about past lives. But I have yet to speak about meeting my soul partner, my wife Pamela. What were the odds of us meeting? We came from the same town in England, Brighton. From the same synagogue, though neither of us visited it very often. We are the same age, but we met in Israel. What are the odds of 2 souls from the Warsaw Ghetto meeting such a way in Israel? My parents moved to Israel and lived in Netanya. My father decided to learn Hebrew and found a private Hebrew teacher. The teacher, Rachel, was at the same time studying at the Kabbalah Center in Tel Aviv, where Pamela happened to be studying. They became friends. Rachel mentioned to my father that she knew someone from Brighton, a 30-year-old single woman. He mentioned it to my mother. She mentioned it to me. I rang up Pamela and we arranged to meet in Netanya. When Pamela opened the door of the apartment where she was staying, she would later tell me she saw her brother. Did I look like one of her brothers? No. So let's return now to where we started. The mystery of life. Why are we here? To answer why requires knowing who we are, to know our soul, name, and mission. 27 years after that walk around the lanes of Brighton, things have radically changed. Soul is now very much part of my lexicon and my perspective as I look at my life within the wider perspective of a soul who has travelled over 3 countries and 2 lives. A soul that in this life has met up with soul partners from a past life. Name. The name of my soul took on meaning. It became in effect a new name. Let me now share with you the last 2 pages of my book, The Birth of a Stone. At about the same time that I was beginning to write down thoughts about some of my life experiences, I made an astonishing discovery. I was reading the morning prayers, and something I had read hundreds of times before, but never noticed, came before me. I saw my name in the text. For most of my life, my name meant nothing to me. Peter, which I assumed is not Jewish, is a symbol of matter, stone in fact, in the Greek language. For many years this interpretation was appropriate for me, given the stony, impenetrable nature, part of my nature, that had been dominant throughout my youth and early adulthood. On that morning, when I discovered my name in the prayer, everything changed. To be able to name something is to be conscious of it, and a change in name, or a change in the perception of a name, denotes a transformation of consciousness. Peta Rechem is the phrase I discovered in the morning prayer. It is found in Exodus 13:1, and it means the first issue of the womb. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever openeth the womb among the children of Israel. It is pronounced Peta rather than Pita, but very clearly the words have the same root, signifying a common meaning. I was quite excited about this discovery. It became as a relief not to be a stone anymore, but the firstborn. This didn't resonate somehow until it dawned on me that if there is a birth, there is an opening. And an opening is an opportunity. At the time I did not see an opportunity reaching out to me, but having begun the exploration into the nature and meaning of my name, I decided to look deeper. Shimon, or Simon, my middle name, has the same root as Shema, the cardinal Jewish prayer. Hear, O Israel. So hearing of some kind was apparently an essential element of the meaning of my second name. During this time, though, I felt that I was hearing nothing except the noise in the busy world outside, as well as the no less busy world inside. Still, I was starting to get the message that opportunities were opening up that would involve deep hearing of some kind. It all began to come together when I looked at my family name, Monde, which means world in French. It began to sink in that my name was telling me something critical. After so many years during which my name meant virtually nothing, I could suddenly hear its essence. My name had metamorphosed. It was no longer something stony and impenetrable. It was now something open and receptive to the voice of the world. The writing I was doing began to take shape. I was basically describing the experience of listening for the divine voice that was calling from within life's events, and that provided the platform for the process of inner transformation. I felt that at last the stone had been born. Mission. My mission is very clearly connected to hearing, to listening. And this hearing is clearly connected to events on the journey of life. My portion of the week in the Torah, the portion which was read during the week I was born, is Matot, Masai, meaning camps and journeys. In Masai, journeys, the 42 stops on the journey of the people of Israel from ancient Egypt to the land of Israel are mentioned. The famous commentator on the Torah, Rashi, said that all these stops are mentioned because they all have inherent value, whether they are very significant stops or seemingly small, insignificant events, as the people of Israel crossed the Sinai desert on their way to the land of Israel. Our sages say we all have 42 stops in our lives. As the name Shimon suggests, the mission requires paying attention and listening to one's inner world, to the world around one, and to what is beyond the world. This means listening to our body, feelings, thoughts, dreams. It means listening to one's aura. It means listening to one's past lives. It means listening to the hints and revelations of everyday events and experiences. It means listening to the Torah and the wisdom of the world. When we listen, we are then in a position to deepen our understanding. We are ready to make connections, for nothing in life is accidental, a matter of luck, good or bad fortune, coincidence. Everything hints at something beyond this world, a divine revelation. And as we examine the events and experiences within a Torah framework, the Torah and the individual path of the soul inform each other. This is what Dr. Mark Cohen called Jewish soul therapy. And after listening and understanding comes the crucial dimension of doing, that is, the acting upon our understanding and fulfilling our mission. Today my mission is to share stories, personal stories about hearing the divine summons, manifesting in life's everyday events, Jewish stories, in particular Hasidic and Holocaust stories passed down by our ancestors, and stories that weave a delicate tapestry made up of threads of personal, communal, and national dimensions of Jewish life, together with the threads of Hasidic and Holocaust stories, rich mines of Jewish tales and teaching. I would like to thank God for giving me a soul, name and mission, and helping me along the path by sending me very relevant messages and disturbances, which turn out to be the same thing. I want to thank my soul partner, Pamela, without whom I could never have discovered my soul, name and mission. I want to thank my teacher, Mark, who died a very untimely death many years ago, from whom I was very privileged to learn Jewish soul therapy. And I want to thank you, the listener, for listening to this podcast.